Hey, welcome to another McBike and Sport fly tying video. In this one we're just going to tie up a quick sockeye fly. So you can use this for fly fishing, of course, but you can also use this for bottom bouncing. Now I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, why would I use a fly? Just tie a piece of yarn on there. And to a certain extent that's almost exactly what this fly is just kind of some yarn and a little bit extra. So why would I do it this way instead of just tying some yarn on the river? Well, number one, I find it's just quicker and easier to grab a fly out of my box than to sit there and tie a piece of yarn on. It's all ready and good to go. And you'll see that with some of the extra little bit we put on here that this actually becomes a bit of an attractant fly to other species. So in our system, Coho are often running at the same time as Sockeye, particularly towards the end of the Sockeye run. So Coho will actually hit this fly. Steelhead will even hit this fly. It looks a little bit like an egg pattern in a way. So what I've got is a Gamakatsu octopus hook. I believe this is a size 1, but I've lost the package, so I'm not quite sure. You can tie these larger if you're strictly targeting sockeye. I know some people like to go as big as a 2/0 for sockeye just to make sort of hooking them up easier. I don't like to do that because, like I said, if we are targeting other species, it's nice if we're not snagging steelhead or snagging coho in our efforts to get sockeye. So I tie it a little bit smaller so that if those fish are in the river, they're not going to get hooked up in the back or the belly or all those things that sometimes happen when you use a much larger hook and bounce it along the bottom. So first thing we're going to do, I've got some uni fire orange 6/0 thread. You can use black or any other color if you want. I just like the fire orange. This is some green or some chartreuse polar chenille. And this is the little bit that I feel just gives it that little bit extra other than just a piece of yarn that makes it a little more attractant. This is dyed UV material as well too, so it does pick up quite nice in the water. Looks great with the yarn over top of that. Give it 2 or 3 wraps. I like to do 2 tie-offs in front, fold the whole thing back, pull back all the fibers, and then lock it down, cinch it off. Okay, and then the next material, like I said, it's pretty much the same as a yarn, tying on a bit of yarn to a fly, is of course some egg yarn. You can use whatever color it is you think might attract some of those other fish. I don't worry about it too much. This is the color I tend to use. So going to about the back of the hook, again, not a big deal for what we're really doing, but I think that looks best. So even though we're just kind of hooking up sockeye, I do like to still put a little bit of effort in the fly. So 2 wraps, and then I position it a little bit to the side so it's not quite centered on the top of the hook. Take the whole thing, the other half, fold it over the top, and cinch it down. Now, the yarn is quite bulky, and so sometimes depending how you manage to fold that over, it can be a little hard to get your thread to stay on top of it. If you use a bit of fly tying wax, really helps give you that little bit of grip to stay on top. So cinch that down good, build up a nice orange head. And you can see how quick these are to tie up, and yes, it probably is quicker just to tie on a piece of yarn on the river, but the thing is, I'm doing this here in my house. I'm not doing this on the river. So when you're sockeye fishing, you're going low along the bottom, if you're bottom bouncing or you're fly fishing, and you lose a lot of gear. You have to re-tie off, like tie your hook on often, to not have to spend that little bit of time tying on your piece of yarn every time. I feel it's worth it, and I don't know, somehow I just feel like I'm not out there doing as much damage if I'm doing it that way, because yeah. So there you go, you can see throw a little head cement on there, and the whole thing's done. When these are wet in the water, it looks quite nice. The green sort of comes out the back a little bit. You can see it on the back. It really does make actually quite a nice little fly. The open gap hook, you're still going to hook into your sockeye quite easily, but in the smaller size, you're not hopefully going to be snagging fish in the back or the tail or things like that. You should be getting them in the mouth, and that way you won't be doing damage to the other species that are out there in the river. So I hope this was useful for you. Get out there, do some sockeye fishing, fill up the freezer before we head into steelhead season.